Rhode Island has low voter turnout historically. How do you get people to the polls?
I think the first thing is getting them excited about actually having representation. So when we're hitting the doors and we're talking to people and we're having that conversation, the idea, which my opponent has not done, and it is not doing, and the majority of our other opponents are not doing. So the idea that they're being actually heard and representing, the intention to represent them, is motivation. I have had people that have literally no interest in hearing my spiel. The fact that I knocked on their door and spent 2 minutes listening to what mattered to them, they're like, "You've got my vote." I was like, "Well, you know, there's actually some significant things that I have to talk about." Not interested. So that they're just not. Like, keep moving. But it's a shame that that's actually the exciting thing for them. Like, oh, I'm going to go to the polls because someone came to my door. Like, that's where I plan on getting my steps in this summer, and that is by knocking on doors. And that's how I expect people to show up to the polls. I can't expect people to show up to the polls if we're not showing up for them. And they're not going to show up to the polls because the State House has consistently not shown up for them.
Can I also add to that? For a long time, the voters haven't had a choice. They haven't needed to show up because they have no choice. There's one person on the ballot.
Yeah. Yep.
They have a choice this year.
Yep.
What about the Democratic primary 2018, where there were choices and there wasn't much turnout? How will this differ?
There were some choices, but there wasn't the level of opportunity that we expect to have this year with the number of candidates that we're rolling out, the number of Democratic primaries that we're seeing across the state. I think that's going to bring a lot of excitement, and then adding to that what Cynthia says, getting out there, knocking on doors, really talking to people. A lot of the people that I talk to have never talked with their representative, but most of them don't even know who their representative is. And so when you get out there and you start talking to them about what you see at the State House, and you really want to hear from them about what's most important to them, it gets them more invested in the process.
Haven't you already had some success?
With talking with people?
Weren't there always people that you all have supported and backed that have gotten in Central Falls, and just people that not necessarily the co-op, but people in general?
No, like we all have it.
As far as cooperative members, yes, that has not been.
This is our first election cycle, so we haven't really been tested yet.
I think I also want to add to that last point, how do we get people excited? We have to address, like, why are people not showing up to the polls? People are not empowered to engage in politics because for the longest time, no matter who you voted for, your interests weren't going to be heard. The State House is a building that is ominous, and there's nobody who looks like you, and there's all this jargon, and it's not accessible. People don't feel empowered when people are just talking legalese to them in a building, and they're in these stuffy suits. You only see them going to that fancy coffee place or that fancy bagel place. In passing, you may or may not know their name. We're trying to, like, break down the barriers and address, like, what is it that communities actually need, and we're not trying to be like these, like, stuffy old white guys who are going about business as usual. It's about taking the politics out of running for office and bringing it back to, like, where it matters, which is the community, and being like a community face so that people know, like, it's not just going to be like Tiara's now in like a 3-piece suit. I'll still be wearing jeans.
Well, I mean, I think to this gentleman's point, also, like, not just about getting excited, people excited to get to the polls, but like, how do we, as a community, help people who have difficulty getting to the polls, that have various and assorted obstacles getting to the polls? Like, how do we get them there? Do we make a state holiday? Do we make our voting earlier? Like, what kinds of things do you all feel can help activate the community?
Yes to all of those.
Yes. Yeah, I was gonna say.
There's also current legislation that's looking at the gerrymandering so that we can address some of those issues and make that less partisan. But yes, all of those things. We need to have early voting. We need to make sure it's accessible. We need to make sure people have the time off to vote. All of those things need to occur.